Hi everyone, today I want to talk about biophilia, the idea that human beings need some connection to nature, and why modern life can feel so unnatural without it. There's a strange contradiction at the heart of modern life. Human life has never been more controlled. We can regulate temperature, light, noise, food access, transport, entertainment and communication with a precision most of history could not imagine. We can work without weather touching us. We can spend entire days indoors without noticing the movement of the sun. We can move from bedroom to car to office to shop to couch without really encountering the outside world at all. And yet for a lot of people, something still feels off. Not always dramatic, not always easy to name, just a low persistent sense of being slightly out of tune, overstimulated and undernourished at the same time. As if something essential has been removed from daily life, and we keep trying to replace it with convenience, productivity and screens. That feeling might not be imaginary. In Australia, government guidance says people spend 90% or more of their time indoors. In the United States, the EPA has long given a similar estimate. More than half of the world's population now lives in urban areas, and the World Health Organization says that share is expected to rise to 68% by 2050. At the same time, adult internet users globally spend an average of 6 hours and 38 minutes online every day. That's a huge portion of waking life spent not in the physical world, but in managed, designed digital environments. So here's the question: what if modern life feels unnatural because in some important ways it is? What if the environments we've built for efficiency, safety and stimulation also strip away many of the conditions human beings seem to respond to best? Daylight, trees, weather, birdsong, water, varied textures, open air, seasonal rhythms, and contact with other living things. There's a word often used for this idea: biophilia. Biophilia is usually described as the idea that human beings have an innate tendency to seek connection with nature and other forms of life. The term has a longer history, but it is especially associated with the biologist E.O. Wilson, who described it as the innate emotional affiliation of human beings to other living organisms. That sounds abstract until you notice how ordinary it is. People look for windows. They put plants in rooms. They slow down near water. They prefer tree-lined streets to blank concrete corridors. They travel great distances to see mountains, forests, coastlines, and deserts. Then speak about those places as if they are not just beautiful but clarifying. Biophilia does not mean forests magically cure everything, nor that every person relates to nature in the same way. And it definitely doesn't mean cities, medicine, or technology were mistakes. It means something more modest than that, and maybe more profound. It means human beings may not be fully at ease in lifeless environments. That possibility is older than the word itself. Long before modern psychology, Hippocrates argued that anyone who wants to understand health must pay attention to airs, waters, and places. In other words, environment matters. The conditions around us are not just scenery. They shape the body and the mind. Much later, Henry David Thoreau wrote, "We need the tonic of wildness." Rachel Carson wrote about the child's inborn sense of wonder. Across very different centuries and worldviews, the pattern keeps returning. Human beings keep circling back to the same thought. We are not separate from the living world, and we do not quite thrive when we try to be. And what makes this more than poetic intuition is that modern research points in much the same direction. The World Health Organization has renewed the evidence on urban green spaces and concluded that they can support mental and physical health through several pathways: stress reduction, physical activity, social interaction, and reduced exposures to heat, noise, and air pollution. A 2025 Umbrella review found associations between green space exposure and reduced all-cause mortality, lower cardiovascular mortality, lower incidence of diabetes and metabolic syndrome, lower risk of low birth weight, and improved mental health. Blue spaces, including coasts, rivers, and lakes, also showed positive associations with psychological well-being. Some findings remain mixed. Some outcomes are still debated, but the overall pattern is becoming difficult to ignore. And that pattern is not just that people say they like nature. Everyone already knows that. The more interesting question is why measurable benefits keep appearing when researchers study contact with green and blue spaces, even when the contact is modest. One 2025 meta-analysis looking at nature exposure and adults with diagnosed mental illness found significant benefits across exposures ranging from just 10 minutes to 2 hours. Another 2025 meta-analysis on urban green exercise found that the strongest mental health benefits appeared with sessions of 20 minutes or less, done at least 3 times a week at low to moderate intensity. And this is just regular, relatively light contact between bodies and living environments. And maybe the most revealing part is this: even indirect contact may matter. A 2025 meta-analysis on views of nature through windows reviewed 28 studies and 104 separate results, and found a significant positive mean correlation between seeing nature from a window and health. If even a view matters, then this is not really a story about elite outdoor lifestyles. It's about baseline sensory contact with living systems, leaves moving, light changing. And that, I think, is where the modern mismatch becomes most visible. Because modern life is not just urban, it's enclosed and climate controlled. It's optimized for convenience, predictability, and continuous low friction function. Much of the built environment is visually repetitive. Smooth walls, synthetic lighting, sealed glass, managed air, asphalt, screens, menus, notifications. Even leisure increasingly takes place inside engineered systems designed to minimize surprise. We've become very good at reducing discomfort, but discomfort and aliveness are not opposites. Sometimes the texture of life depends on the very things modern systems are designed to filter out, like wind, darkness, changing temperatures, dirt, silence, distance, birdsong, the smell of rain, and so on. One place this becomes especially visible is sleep. A 2025 adult study found that daily screen use before bed was associated with a 33% higher prevalence of poor sleep quality and about 50 minutes less sleep per week. That may sound like a side issue, but it's not. Sleep is one of the most basic biological rhythms we have, and modern digital life interferes with it constantly. So when people say they feel fried, scattered, or numb, it's worth asking whether part of the problem is not only stress or overwork, but habitat. Habitat in the human sense. What sort of environment is this organization actually built to inhabit? That question becomes sharper when you look at how unevenly nature contact is distributed. A study of urban populations found that 75% of direct experiences of nature were accounted for by just 32% of the population. The authors concluded that regular direct nature experience appears to be the exception rather than the norm. And that line matters because it pushes back against the lazy assumption that nature is available to everyone who really wants it. For many people, it's not. Access depends on neighborhood design, time, safety, income, mobility, disability, transport, work hours, and whether green space exists nearby at all. So that's why this conversation should not become moralistic. The point is not that good people hike and bad people scroll. The point is that many modern environments are built in ways that make regular contact with living systems rarer than it probably should be. And when that contact disappears, people may lose something important without even having language for it. Urban planners and public health researchers have tried to capture part of this problem with ideas like the 3-30-300 rule. Ideally, a person should be able to see at least 3 trees from home, live in a neighborhood with 30% tree canopy, and be within 300 meters of a quality green space. But even this is not simple. A 2025 Netherlands study found that only 16.4% of respondents met the full rule. Those who did were more likely to be physically active and less likely to be overweight. But the mental health findings were inconclusive. That nuance matters because it keeps the argument honest. The easy version of this topic says, nature good, cities bad. The harder version says something else. It says human beings appear to function better when daily life includes at least some visible, audible, tangible contact with the living world. Modern life often reduces or fragments that contact. The result may not be dramatic in every case, but it may help explain a low-grade sense of estrangement that many people now treat as normal. And maybe that estrangement is part of why modern culture keeps trying to sneak nature back in. Houseplants in tiny apartments, park runs before work, bird feeders outside kitchen windows, walks treated as mental health maintenance, an interior design that reaches for wood, daylight, stone, flowing water, and organic forms. We keep reinventing ways to get closer to living systems, even in highly artificial environments. That doesn't prove biophilia in some final absolute sense, but it does suggest that people are reaching for something. Not always consciously, but sometimes they're just reaching for relief. Or maybe recognition is the better word, because one reason a tree-lined street can feel better than a blank wall, or a river can calm people in ways a spreadsheet cannot, is that living systems carry complexity without the particular kind of demand modern systems place on us. A forest is not a productivity app. A shoreline is not a feed. Birds do not notify you. Weather does not try to optimize engagement. The natural world can be harsh, indifferent, and dangerous, but it's not synthetic. It doesn't perform or ask to be managed into a personal brand. That may be one reason so many people find it restorative. Not because nature is always peaceful, but because it is real in a way much of modern life isn't. So when we ask why modern life feels so unnatural, the answer is probably not one thing. It's not just screens, though screens matter. It's not just cities or stress or capitalism. Modern life is increasingly organised around abstraction, control and enclosure, while human beings remain creatures who respond to light, weather, water and trees. We built a world of extraordinary convenience, but convenience is not the same as nourishment. And maybe that is the real question biophilia raises. Not whether human beings should reject modern life, but whether modern life becomes more livable when it remembers what kind of animal it's built for. Not everyone needs a cabin in the woods. Not every green space delivers the same benefit. But if the evidence is even partly right, then nature is not a luxury extra for a select few. It's not just decorative, not just scenery. It may be closer to baseline human support than modern societies have been willing to admit. More than 2,000 years ago, Hippocrates told readers to pay attention to airs, waters and places. Thoreau wrote that we need the tonic of wildness. Rachel Carson wrote of an inborn sense of wonder. And E.O. Wilson gave a modern name to the possibility that our species is still, at some deep level, drawn toward life. Maybe that pull is not sentimental, and maybe it's not a weakness. Maybe the reason modern life can feel so unnatural is that in some quiet but consequential ways it is. And maybe the answer is not to abandon the modern world, but to rebuild daily life so it contains more of what living creatures seem to need.